Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Just a reminder, I'm going to be sharing some of my research. My research is found there on that ResearchGate page. Also, a very active Twitter account, Eddie RD MD. There's also the YouTube page and also the Instagram page. All these things are free. Anybody can have free access to them. As an example of things I put on my Twitter account, exactly what Katie was saying, this study found out the amount of microplastic that you take per source of water. So people that drink from the tap, you're drinking about 4,000 microplastic particles per year. In your food and drink, on average, 52,000 microparticles. And bottled water, 90,000. So that's the winner. You can see there, there's a big difference. So beware of where you get your microplastic. Go to my Twitter account. You can find the published paper where the study came from. This one showing the importance of living in a place that is green. If you live in a place that is green, there's all kinds of positive beneficial effects. This one, very interesting study, doing a correlation between how much you sleep and your risk of type 2 diabetes. Sleeping less than 6 hours of sleep a night definitely correlated to higher risk of diabetes. So not only what you eat is very important, but how much you sleep has an effect due to the impact on your body clocks. This one, very interesting study, how light at a certain spectrum actually reduces your blood glucose. So you can get a similar effect if you go outside and you take sun baths. In that way, you get that spectrum of light and glucose can literally come down. This one, right now you're seeing a lot of talk about this quote, medicinal mushrooms, which are not that medicinal because they cause all kinds of trouble. In this study, people with bipolar disorder that were taking these medicinal mushrooms, 1/3 actually their symptoms got worse. So beware of people pushing this type of things. This one, we discovered there's a new system in the brain that cleanses the brain, and that mechanism activates when you have deep sleep. That's the problem of taking caffeine, for example. Any form of caffeine will make your sleep more superficial, and you're not getting that cleansing of your brain. That's the problem with alcohol. When you drink alcohol, your sleep cannot be nice and deep, and you don't get that benefit. This other one, how chronic inflammation affects motivation due to the changes in the chemistry of the brain. And this one, how ultra-processed foods increase risk of mortality, cancers, and cardiovascular disease. What's ultra-processed food? Something that you cannot make in your own kitchen. The noodles that you buy packaged and so forth, you cannot make those in your kitchen, isn't it? You have to go and buy those. Beware of those. This one showing that many of the new medications in the market, they have better marketing. That's why they try to convince you, ask your doctor about this medication, and such and such. And usually there is a generic version that works as well as that, except that it costs 10% or 5% of what the new one costs. So that's why they try to push that new one, because there's a lot of money involved in that new one. So you can find those in that Twitter account and many more. Every single day I'm putting new studies there documenting what our choices, the impact that they have on our health. So let's talk about a missionary on a secular campus. I wanted to share with you a little bit of my history And my background is European, indigenous American, but a good percentage of my background actually is Jewish. And in Luke 21, starting on verse 20, when Jesus was on earth, he was very worried that many of those Jews that were living at the time, they were going to have severe consequences secondary to the fact that they did not accept him as the Messiah. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that it is desolation, that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, let those who are in the midst of her depart, and let not those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people, and they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captives, where? Into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And that's exactly what happened. Just as Jesus predicted, my ancestors, long time ago, a branch of my ancestors had that happen to them, and they had to move. So one of the places that the Jews went, it said they're all nations, because they went all over the place. One of the places that they went was to Portugal and Spain. So immediately after the destruction of the temple, many of them went all the way in what today is Spain and Portugal. There was a second wave in the Middle Ages around the 5th century, and the Golden Age between the 9th and the 11th. And let me tell you why. So as the Jews moved there to Spain and Portugal, they were treated as second-class citizens. There were many things they couldn't do. One of them was to serve in the courts of the kings, and the king of Spain and the king of Portugal. And Jewish people, have always been educated people because they read the Torah and so forth. They know how to read and this type of things that they do. The king of Spain, Alfonso León and Castile, he, for the first time in the year 1085, gave the opportunity of the Jewish people to serve in the court. Before, this was not allowed. So what ended up happening, because they were more educated than the people of Spain, when he opened the door, the Jewish people started taking over the whole courts because of their educated background. And the Spanish people and the Portuguese people didn't like that. Now, they were taking away their jobs and so forth. So they started a revolt to start to marginalize the Jewish people. There was a lot of radicalization and so forth that took place. And by the 1500s, things were pretty bad. There was a lot of persecution with them. First, they had moved to Portugal, most of them. The other ones that escaped, to the north, to the east, to the south. But the majority of them moved to Portugal. And in Portugal, things were okay. The king gave them opportunity to live peacefully there. And everything looked okay until the king of Portugal wanted his son to marry the daughter of the king of Spain. And as part of the negotiations for that to happen, the king of Spain told the king of Portugal, Sure, you can have, my daughter, but with one condition. You had to persecute the Jews. And that's when they started persecuting the Jews in Portugal. So now things were like really, really difficult because they couldn't move back to Spain and things were getting pretty bad. And exactly at that time in history is when Christopher Columbus arrives to Spain. So now the opportunity of the Jewish people to move there open up. Now, technically, it was actually illegal for the Jewish people to move to the Americas. So what they would do, they would bribe some priest there to seal some document saying, oh, this one is not Jew. And that's how they end up moving many of them to the American continent. So migration started to occur to the places where the Portuguese and the Jewish and the Spanish people were coming into Mexico. That line that you see there in Mexico is where some of my ancestors went through. If you want to see the size of Mexico, here is the comparison of Mexico versus Australia. Pretty much about the same, length, except that you guys have a little bit more land around. On my dad's side, how did my dad become an Adventist? Well, on my dad's side, he comes from the northern part of Mexico. This is a very prosperous town by the name of Monterrey. And a lot of Jewish blood runs there in that Monterrey town. It's interesting because the founder of that city is actually my 12th great-grandfather, straight line. I come from this man. It's interesting that you can go to the center of the town and you see a statue of your grandfather there. Which town you go and you see a statue of your grandfather like that. He was not a nice man. This man actually killed his wife in a rage and so forth. So yeah, he had his history. And my great-grandfather, his name is Bartolome. He had a few important sons. Among them, this one. Francisco Ramirez Villarreal is his name. He was a very important person because when they revised the Constitution of Mexico in 1917, he was a representative that was revising that Constitution. One challenge that Mexico had back then was the challenge of religious liberty. One of the most famous presidents of Mexico, his name is Benito Juarez. He was the first indigenous person that actually became a president. Benito Juarez made a very interesting observation. I'll show you in a minute. So here's my great uncle. He was a representative there on that Congress that revised the Constitution. In fact, my other name is Francisco in honor of him. And this is what Benito Juarez wrote in 1860. Very interesting. The future happiness and prosperity of my nation depends on the development of Protestantism, he wrote. He later stated, I wish that Protestantism became Mexicanized by conquering the Indians. They need a religion that helps them read and don't force them to spend their savings on candles for the saints. He said that. So, one of the points in the Constitution that was very well discussed during that revision of the Constitution was religious liberty. Religious liberty was very difficult back then because you didn't have liberties to start other denominations and so forth, other than the one that they officially were trying to use. So, my great uncle was actually part of the party that was pushing for religious liberty during the conference. And at the end of the day, after they passed the new constitution, that was ratified into law. So now you had religious liberty in Mexico. And the first missionaries to Mexico that came there became friends with my grandfather. My grandfather, he liked the vision that Adventists had. A vision of not only, baptize people, but improve their overall health by helping construct clinics and hospitals, educating the people that had been converted and so forth. So they created this non-profit organization to start creating multiple institutions all over Mexico. And he was one of the main advisors for them. My great uncle never became an Adventist, but liked very much the work that they did. So one of the most important institutions in Mexico is this University of Montemorelos, very close to that Monterrey city when the statue of my great-great-great-grandfather is. And in fact, he liked so much the idea of this university and high school that they were starting, he even donated part of his land to make this place even a little bit bigger. And that's how my dad became an Adventist, because my great uncle, once the institution started, since he knew what type of school this was, he sent my father to study there in that institution, and that's how my dad became an Adventist. The institution has very good reputation all over Mexico. There was a past president, a recent one. He sent his son to study there. That's what type of institution it is. So here's my dad in his younger years. Now, on my mom's side, my mom comes from the middle part of Mexico. That's where these mariachis and this type of people come from, the one with the big hat and so forth. That's the area of Mexico where they come from. And this is a picture that I gave color using AI. And this is my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather, he had a farm and so forth. And he was very good friends of the religious leader there of the town. But when the new constitution was voted, the church didn't like that, and they caused a civil war in Mexico because they were saying, no, this constitution is not valid and blah, blah, blah. Religious liberty shouldn't happen and so forth. So the worst part of the war actually was where my great-grandfather was living. And that religious leader that was a friend, quote, quote, of my grandfather came one day to steal his things with the excuse that they needed his horses and his guns and all these things because the war needed those things. So my great-grandfather became very bitter against spiritual things until one day a bookseller came to town to sell some books. And my great-grandfather bought the books, and he liked what he was reading. Very soon he started studying more the Bible and decided to get baptized. So everybody, all the brothers of my grandfather became Adventists. You can see them there. All those ones that you see there, all of them became Adventists, except my grandfather. My grandfather didn't want to get baptized. So one day, the bookseller came to visit him. And my grandfather thought in his head, I'm going to teach him a lesson to this bookseller so he never comes back to bother me. And he had a horse that nobody could ride. So he put that horse next to a big patch of cactus because he wanted his bookseller to get on that horse and for the horse to throw him to that cactus patch of cactus so he would never come back to visit him. So he told the bookseller, look, I have some cows there. Would you mind getting on the horse and fetching me those cows? Well, the bookseller very kindly got on the horse and went and fetched the cows, and the horse as calm as anything. When my grandfather saw that, he said, this is from God. It is absolutely impossible for somebody to get on that horse and not be thrown to the floor. And that's how God convicted him, and that's how he became an Adventist. And this is my mom, in her younger years. And that's how his whole family became an Adventist. In fact, he was the first one to build an Adventist church in that town. His name was Cleophas, and people used to call that church the Church of Cleophas. That's how people knew that. Many people ask me, how do I get into doing what I'm doing? There's an interesting quotation that says, our gracious Heavenly Father sees the deplorable condition of man who, some knowingly but many ignorantly, are living in violation of the laws that He has established. And in love and pity to the race, He causes light to shine upon health reform. He publishes His law and the penalty that will follow the transgression of it, that all may learn and be careful to live in harmony with natural law. To make plain natural law and to urge the obedience of it is the work that accompanies the third angel's message, to prepare a people for the coming of the Lord. So, this is my story. I originally studied computer science. I thought this is what I was going to do with my life. This was back in the 1990s, where few people, knew computers, where there were big problems with internet access and these type of things. Very few people actually had access to that. And my friends started running, so I started running with them, and it ended up being that I was always the last place among my friends. So I said, this is not right. I need to do something to improve my times. So what I did, I went to the library to read what are the people that are winning the race, what are they doing? And that's when I found out that most of these Ethiopians and Kenyans that are winning all these marathons and long distance races, they're all on a plant-based diet. So I said, okay, I'm going to see what happens if I switch my diet. So I went ahead and switched my diet, and sure enough, my time started improving tremendously. This was not psychological. I could see it on my watch. I started getting first places in my town. I could see how I'd become so fast by making that switch on my diet. And not only that, it was my best semester in my computer science undergraduate. In fact, every single note, every single subject that I took on that last semester, top notes, top notes, top notes, top notes. So I finished my bachelor's in computer science, and I applied for a master's in computer science. The university looked at my profile and they liked what they saw. They offered me a full scholarship. And while I was waiting to start my master's in computer science, I visited for the first time in my life a lifestyle center. I have even never heard of those places. And as I go there, my brother was working there, so I went to visit him just for the weekend, supposedly. And when the doctor in charge heard that I knew about computers, again, this is 1994, where there's few people that knew computers, he told me, hey, can you help me this weekend that you're here? I have many computer problems. Would you mind helping me? I told him, sure, no problem. In 1 weekend, I fixed most of his major computer problems. He was so impressed, he offered me a job on the spot. Hey, would you consider joining our staff at the Lifestyle Center? And to me, this was very confusing. I'm supposed to start my master's degree. He is offering me to join him on his staff. I cannot do both at the same time. What am I going to do? So I decided not to do my master's and rather join that staff, and my life changed completely as a result of that. When I saw with my own eyes how diabetes was being reversed, hypertension, autoimmune conditions, obesity, and all kinds of things were getting better, I said to myself, you know what? Computers are nice, but this is what I need to do with my life. And that's when the desire came to my heart to prepare further and enter into medical school, which the Lord opened years later. I also work in this institution where the famous faces of the presidents are. The Lifestyle Center is just 15 minutes from there. So very nice institution. This is where I found my favorite Bible verse, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. After that, I went to Hawaii. We were doing lifestyle interventions there for the people of Korea and the Koreans that live in America. Everybody was Korean except me, and it was a nice experience to work there. And then I work in Norway. There's a lifestyle center there. In fact, I usually go once a year to give them a hand. It's a beautiful lifestyle center located in state land. So there's kilometers and kilometers of walks there among the mountains in Kongsberg, Norway. So we came to a point, my family and I, that we had applied for an extension of our Norwegian visa. Norwegian visa expired, and we were praying, what's going to happen? Should we stay here or should we move on? We were praying, Lord, if you don't approve this visa, I want to go to medical school. If you want us to stay there, we'll be happy to stay there in Norway. Well, it ended up being that they denied the famous Norwegian visa, so we saw the Lord was opening the door to go into medical school. I could have gone to medical school in America, but I was going to get myself into a $350,000 debt. And I say, why do I need that in my life? There's no need to have that type of debt in your background. So I went down to Mexico to study. The Lord opened the doors there. My dad had a house there, and he said, look, you move there, the house is there, you can use it without having to pay anything. And one of the commitments that I did was what is found in the book Steps to Christ. Consecrate yourself to God in the morning. Make this your very first work. Let your prayer be, take me, O Lord, as wholly thine. I laid all my plans at thy feet. Use me today in thy service. Abide with me, and let all my work be wrought in thee. This is a weekly, daily matter. Each morning, consecrate yourself to God for that day. So even though I knew, that studying medicine is difficult, you have these nice and thick books that you need to go through, I prioritized, and I always started my day with worship. And these are some of my friends that I met there during medical school. And I realized that everybody has 4 fundamental questions that they need to give an answer to. The questions are the question of origin. Where do I come from? The question of meaning. What am I doing here? The question of morality. How do you decide good from bad? And the question of destiny. When you died, what happens? Everybody, regardless of their background, will have to give an answer to those questions. Now, the interesting thing is that only, in my opinion, Christianity gives a comprehensive answer that meets the needs of all those 4 questions. For example, if you examine worldviews like atheism, where do I come from? What do the atheists say? Came from a cosmic accident. If I came from a cosmic accident, what's the meaning of life? How do you decide good from bad? If there's no God, if there's no lawgiver, how do you decide what's good and what is bad? What's the question of destiny? What happens when you die? Game over, isn't it? But Christianity gives another angle to the answer to those fundamental questions. Something that the Bible teaches is that we have a day of rest. Hebrews 4:9, there remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. And the Greek word there is the word sabbatos, where we get the word Sabbath. And we started having some challenges, as this was a secular university. One teacher was starting to say that she was going to give us some tests on Sabbath and so forth. In my class, there was only one Adventist, so I told him, well, let's just pray and see how God answers this. And when the test was getting close to coming to that point, a friend of mine found a vote that the university board had taken that said students that keep the Sabbath, they need to make provision for that, the teachers, so that they can take, the test on another day and so forth. God came through. Another interesting experience happened when I was in my 3rd semester. There was a young boy that had failed the microbiology class, and the university gave him the opportunity to retake that class in our semester. So when he came, I was just being nice to him, you come to a new group and, all the people are different and you don't know anybody. So I was just trying to be kind with him and trying to make him, feel welcome to the new group that he had to interact with. And he, out of the blue, asked me, hey, what church do you go to? And I was like, well, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. He said, I want to go to church with you. So I started becoming our little mission project. And yeah, every Saturday, we'll go and pick him up and he would hang around with us and have a good time with us. Another interesting thing happened when I had my sociology class. In sociology, Romans 1:20 is very clear. For instance, the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. And the teacher announced that we were going to talk about in the next class about the origin of man. So I knew the discussion was going to get pretty interesting the next day. So I have a lot of material on that subject. It's something I'm very passionate about. So I started organizing all my material that I have. And the teacher assigned the class to one of the students. He told him, go and prepare the class, and you're going to be the one leading the class and the discussion for the day. But my friend was kind of irresponsible, so he didn't prepare at all for that class. So the next day, when we were supposed to have the class, he got in front there to save his face and started saying a few things. And after 10 minutes, he just ran out of things to say. So the classroom was in a total silence, uncomfortable silence. And I'm the one that broke the silence. Teacher, could I continue with the class? I volunteer. And she said, yeah, please do. You know, she was very happy that somebody took initiative to do that. And then we started talking about the real origin of man. So we're talking about what are called the icons of evolution. The icons of evolution are certain illustrations that are repeated over and over in books like biology books, and many of them are not true. Why they're still there, I don't know. For example, you've probably seen this image there in some of your biology books. They're called the Haeckel embryos, in which supposedly the first primitive embryo, they all look alike, the shark and the crocodile and the monkey and the human, and then as they grow, they start to differentiate much more. Did you know that these were fraudulent? This Haeckel, he was cooking his research. Because he was doing manual drawings, he was not being accurate at what was done, and he was discovered that it was a fraud. Why is still being printed there? I don't know. Another one we were talking about is this one. You probably have seen it. Supposedly how the end part of the leg of the horse started changing from having some little fingers until becoming something solid and so forth. This is not true. There are many evolutionists that have come out publicly saying this is not true, this is not something we should be promoting. Why it's still in the textbooks? I don't know. We were talking about the Australopithecus, this fossil that they found in Ethiopia. I actually have seen the original. If you go to the Natural History Museum in Frankfurt, Germany, that's where they have the original. And this thing doesn't have anything human at all. This thing is a monkey. It is this size, this thing. Now, in the textbooks, they paint his face, look at that face, like human type of face, and so that is not the face of this creature. As you can see, we don't even know the bones in the face, you know. But in order to try to promote their agenda, they paint this human-like face and so forth. And yeah, definitely not human at all, this Australopithecus, this Lucy fossil. We were going through the anatomy of the monkey. A monkey is very different from the human skull. In fact, I'm going to give you the key. Next time you go to the Natural History Museum, where they're supposedly show the evolution of the skull of the human, there's only two groups of skulls there. They're monkeys or they're humans. There's nothing in between. We're too different in our anatomy, one to the other one. Look at this. This is the skull of the monkey. First, where the brain goes in the monkey is very small. In the human is very big. That's why we're much smarter than the monkeys. The brow. Notice that very pronounced brow that the monkey skull has. The humans have a very refined brow. The angle of the face. Humans have a straight face. Monkeys have an angled face. The teeth of the monkey are rough because they're designed so they can tear things apart and so forth. Our teeth are more refined. The muscles of the jaw, the monkey has very strong muscles in his jaw because it needs to bite and tear things apart. Our jaw is a more refined type of jaw and so forth. Very, very clear the big difference between one to another one. We're talking about the Neanderthal man. This group of people were just humans. They did art, they did music, they were very smart people and so forth. Some theorized that they had a condition of arthritis, and that's why you see some of those deformations in their fingers and so forth. I even gave him the illustration of my daughter. My daughter, I like to take her to libraries and things, and I remember I took her to a university library, and they had this picture there, and the title of the magazine was The Ancestor of Humans. My daughter, 3 years old, saw that picture and said, "Look, Daddy, a monkey." It doesn't take the intelligence of I'm older than 3 years old to realize this thing is not human, isn't it? That this thing is a monkey. So I was sharing that with the class. By the end of the class, the class was silent, and the teacher was, "Is there any questions?" And everybody was nice and quiet. And later on, as I started talking to some of them, I realized some of them started to change their worldview as they started seeing another angle of the study. And when I was in my 4th semester, we needed to do a research. And one idea that I had was to lower the cholesterol using a plant-based diet and exercise. As you saw, I had worked in all these lifestyle centers before I went into medical school. So I went and talked to my advisor and told him, what I want to do for a research project, I want to lower cholesterol with a plant-based diet. My advisor said, "Ramirez, don't waste your money. Cholesterol doesn't come down unless you take medication." I told him, "Look, it's my money. I want to do this." So I convinced him to give me permission to do it. And sure enough, every single person that switched his diet to a plant-based diet and healthy lifestyle, his cholesterol came down. In fact, the newspaper heard about the results, and they even published this note there in the biggest newspaper of town, documenting how they had lowered the cholesterol. And I even published the results later on a scientific journal. It came in the Journal of Clinical Lipidology, these results. You can find it there on the research gate. In fact, one of the patients came down 117 points. You guys use another measurement here. You guys use the Europeans. That would be like 2.1 points that came down, that cholesterol, in only 2 weeks. And another interesting opportunity came about in the 4th semester. The 4th semester was the most difficult semester of my medical studies. It was very difficult because of 2 subjects. We had the class of infectology. So you have to learn all the medications and all the diseases and the different dosages and so forth. You have to integrate all that knowledge. It was a lot of information that you needed to learn. And the second class that was very difficult was the class of clinical laboratory, in which you're learning, about to interpret the test and all these things. And this class was very difficult because the professor that was teaching that class have always wanted to be a doctor and was never able to be one. So his goal in life was for you to also not become one. He would put the most difficult test ever during his classes. So I knew I had these 2 very difficult classes. Usually you have friends ahead of you that start telling you, hey, watch out for this class or this other one when you get there. And at the very beginning of the semester, the leadership from the conference show up there and one Sabbath, and they said, we want to organize a Adventist student group. And I knew about these groups. I had friends that were doing that in other towns, and they basically became social clubs. They would go out and eat together and stuff, which I'm not against that. If you want to do that, go for it. That's good. But I thought that they could have much more impact, this type of group. So they did a little election there and selected me as their president of that little organization. And at the same time, a canvasser was talking to a pastor that had separated from his denomination and had started his own little church. And that pastor offered the canvasser the church. So I challenged my little group, why don't we go and plant a church there? And that's what we did. We started a university church in that campus. And it was great. It was a fantastic experience. We did many projects like health expos and so forth. And we saw the results of people giving their lives to the Lord. By the time I finished medical school, during graduation, after they tally all the scores and things, I end up being the one that graduated first place in his class. And because of that, they asked me to be the one doing the speech there, during the graduation. So during my speech, what I told him, I'm not supposed to be here, in the first place. I told him I'm married, you guys are not married. My education is paid by myself. I had to work every summer, every winter to pay my bills. I told them, your parents pay for your education. I knew that. I am older than you guys. You're younger than me. I study one day less than you guys study. For me, Sabbath was a day of rest. I was not going to study that day. So I'm not supposed to be here. And I told him, I'm going to give you the secret how I got here. It's found in the book of Daniel, in the chapter 1 of that book. That's where it states how you can get to this place. I give you homework if you're not familiar with that, to go and read that Daniel chapter 1. So in the system that I study, you have to do 1 year of internship. And then you had to do 1 year of service to the government. And the way it worked, the government would release the list of places where you could potentially serve. And because I graduated first place in my class, I was going to be the first one selecting from that list. And when I saw that list, I realized I had to move. There was none of those places were in the town I was. At first it bothered me, but it was God, directing this. So, as it says in Proverbs 15:22, there is wisdom when you ask others. Without counsel, plans go awry, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established. So the Lord impressed me. Why don't I talk to the conference president, a good friend of mine? So I called him and told him, look, I need to move to one of these potential places. Where does the church need me? Where the church need me, I'll go and move there. He said, I need you to move to a place by the name of San Felipe. If you see the map of Mexico, you have the main part of Mexico, and then you have the peninsula of Mexico. Where both of them meet in that spot is a beautiful fisherman town, and many Canadians and Americans move down there for the winter because the winter is very nice instead of being frozen there, in Canada, Michigan, Wisconsin, and so forth. So you find the tallest cactus in the world there. This is it's called the Valley of the Giants, this place. You can see the tremendous size of this cactus that grow there. And that was the little church that I started leading. So we had the Mexicans, and we had those Canadian and Americans. So they hire me some sort of lay pastor there. So I was the pastor in the weekend and the doctor the rest of the week. And as I started serving there, I realized that the health of my members was not good. They were getting sick of things they shouldn't because of issues with their lifestyle. So the Lord impressed me to start health lectures between the first service and the divine service. In that little space, I started giving health education to the community. And then I got the idea, why don't I invite the people that I see in the week? They need this information to be healthier. So every patient I would see in the week, I would tell them, look, this Saturday I'm going to speak about cancer. I'm going to speak about heart disease. I'm going to speak about diabetes and so forth. So many people didn't even know that that church existed, started showing up there. Another thing that I did, I started the first diabetes education of the town. And there was no diabetes education at all in that town. So diabetics would come there with their sugars all over the place, and the doctor would just say, oh, just follow the diet and the exercise. What diet, what exercise? They didn't have a clue about that. So I took initiative. I talked to the mayor of the town and told him we need to do some diabetes education. What can you offer me? He said, well, there's the library there. You can use it anytime you want. I went and talked to all these organizations and told them, look, I need glucometers. People there don't even have a glucometer to check themselves. So every Thursday morning and afternoon, we had this diabetes club in which I was educating people there how to take care of their diabetes. It was fantastic. We were able to see many diabetes reversals there. So now I started having a problem. A lot of people in town started changing their diets and their habits, and this is what is considered a food desert. When you go to these stores, there's nothing healthy in those stores. So I took initiative and talked to the business owners and told them, look, here's all these people that are trying to make changes, but I don't see much healthy options in your stores. I need you to bring me healthy things. I knew that they would cross to America to bring things. So I gave them a nice list of things that they should bring me. And at the beginning, he didn't really believe me. As soon as he came back from his trip, people immediately went to the store to buy these things. And he had just bought one or two things on the list. Man, people started fighting against the owner of the store. Hey, the doctor said you're going to have this. How come you don't have it? So now he knew that this was serious and started stocking up his store with tofu and almond milk and brown rice and all these goodies. And then another interesting experience happened. As I kept my diabetes education every weekend, the pastor from a non-denominational church, American and Canadian, much bigger than mine, started showing up in my lectures. And he really liked what he was hearing there. So he told me, why don't you come to my church and teach us these things that you're teaching here? So I started going also on Sundays to start teaching these things. He was the first one to start making the changes, the pastor. Very soon he was off all his medications because he got better. Man, he was just in fire for this. And started encouraging all his members to do the lifestyle changes that were being promoted. So I started doing cholesterol lowering programs in that Sunday church, and I even published the results of those interventions showing how that plant-based diet really helps to lower those risk factors in only 2 weeks. So it was very nice to serve there, as to see how people, gave their lives and lives were changed. People became healthier. Even the restaurants changed their menus. When people came to the restaurant, they were like, don't you have something healthy? I used to see chicken and fish here. Don't you have a healthy option here? So the business owners of the restaurants realized they had to change their menus to accommodate, for the big population that wanted more healthy things. So in closing, there's a very good quotation that says, "We have nothing to fear for the future except as we shall forget the way the Lord has led us and his teachings in our past history." May God bless you. May you be able to accomplish that plan that God has for your life that only you can accomplish. Thank you very much.